Okay, Shabbat Shalom. I wanted to address the issue of the calendar and whether it is the new year, whether Passover has passed already, or whether it's coming up. So I'm watching a video by Nazarene Israel, Aviv Barley Simplified, and he brought up some excellent points. I've been watching about 17 minutes now of this video. After this video, I will go to the website and read on the Nazarene Israel website what they've posted, and then go to Ancient Path New Moon's latest live stream, I believe, and see what they say there, because he brings up excellent points. Initially, he had presented in the opening of the video how there are three perspectives determining the new moon. We have the perspective of, let me just rewind a little bit here. So I'm at 17 minutes 36. But essentially he says there are three perspectives. Here it is. Okay, he's saying that they changed the calendar a few times. And he asks, what is Aviv Barley? How much do you need? When do you need it? So those are very important questions. And then he goes into the three positions. They want to bring in the harvest first. The Karaites and Abib of God teach Abib barley is harvest ripe barley. We need whole fields of it. Whole fields. So I was of that mindset even before posting this video or recording this. Here are the three patterns. Karaites. Harvestable fields are needed to declare the new moon of Abib. He says this is incorrect. Number 2, harvestable fields needed by the day of wave sheaf. So this is new moon plus 15 to 21 days. And this is also incorrect. The third opinion are not anti-Yeshua. This is of Becca Bitterman of Ancient Path New Moon and also Nazarene Israel. And he says it's correct. Obviously, he's Nazarene Israel saying he's correct. But he's saying essentially that you have to bring the very first sheaf of Abib barley, which is symbolic of Yeshua. It is in the dough phase. It's not dry, brittle, or brown. And that actually makes a lot of sense to me because, again, it represents Yeshua, the wave sheaf, the first fruits. He is the first fruits. Fast forwarding a little bit here. Okay, we're going to get to the 17-minute mark. It says here, you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits. So you really shouldn't harvest. The harvest is not ready until the first fruits is ready. Look at here. Look at Genesis 4. It says Cain brought an offering of the fruit. So it's not the first fruit, but Abel, brought the first fruits, and it was accepted because it was what he was supposed to bring, the first fruit, the very best and first in order as well. So now I'm at 17 minutes 30. So I will pause this recording and keep listening and give you the highlights. Okay, so this portion here is going to be probably the strongest evidence I've heard so far in terms of why this is the correct way to reckon the new year. This is from the historian Josephus, a very ancient source, just shortly after Yeshua, after his period. So I'm going to let him do the reading here.
But we see that this is even the pattern. This is the way it was done in the first century. So the famed Jewish historian Josephus, in his book Antiquities of the Jews, book 3, chapter 10 and verse 5, he's talking about the wave sheaf. He's talking about the first fruits offering. He says, they offer the first fruits of their barley, and that in the following manner. He says they take a handful of the ears, so it doesn't have to be whole fields, it's just a handful of ears, it's a small amount, and dry them. This tells us that it's not these brown, dry, brittle barley. It has to be something that's still green. Because why? Because it has to be dried. He says, then they beat them small. We'll talk about this when we talk about Garis Carmel, and purge the barley from the bran. Again, we'll talk about this when we talk about Garis Carmel. He says, then they bring 1/10 deal to the altar, to Elohim, and casting one handful of it upon the fire, they leave the rest for the use of the priest. Josephus says, and after this, it is that they may publicly or privately reap their harvest. So once again, it's the exact same pattern we see. First, we bring after this, it is that they may publicly or privately reap their harvest.
Slow, I have to repeat this a few times. So basically he's saying they bring 1/10, right, to the altar, to Elohim. They cast one handful of it upon the fire. They leave the rest for the priest, so to eat, I'm supposing. After this, it is that they may publicly or privately reap their harvest. So they haven't harvested yet. So after this, so how many days is that after this happens? Is it the same day, day later, or maybe is it before the feast? That actually makes sense. Okay, so let's hypothetically we have a Aviv barley showing, Aviv barley, and it seems ready, or it is ready, I should say, and it's a small amount. And so the new moon appears, and we say, okay, that's enough barley. It's an omer's worth, and a handful, as Josephus stated. And then they do this process, this procedure, drying it, because again, it isn't brittle, it's not brown, it's not dry, it is fresh, it's green. And then they beat them small. It kind of, it really does symbolize Yeshua being beaten. And he was taken in the prime of his life, not towards the end of his life. And they purged the barley from the bran. He said he'll explain that later. And then they take 1/10 to the altar, and then after this, they may publicly or privately reap their harvest. So they haven't harvested yet. So there's still time that has to elapse between this wave sheaf, the first fruit, to the actual harvest. So the harvest isn't actually, yes, it is a feast of unleavened bread. So, but it's not. Doesn't seem to be a big harvest yet. So how do you keep the feast of unleavened bread if you don't have anything ready? That's my question. How do you have, let's just say, millions of people fed by matzos, unleavened bread, and you can't use the previous years? How do you do that with a small quantity? So that's my question. I'm not even sure how to answer that. So I'm going to pause and continue listening. He's quoting Leviticus 2:14, and he's saying that you need to have new or green heads of grain roasted on the fire. It has to be beaten, or in the Septuagint it says ground. So you can't actually ground, not that you cannot, but in order to remove the grain from the chaff, you have to manually remove it, remove the husk, and use a mortar and pestle. However, when it is fully ripe, you don't need to do that. You don't need to beat it out of from the chaff. So this verse proves that this is a young head of grain, of barley. Okay, I'm at this part of the video, 33 minutes now, and he's talking about gerris, which means beaten corn, essentially. And then the next part of it is, it's actually gerris Carmel. I'm trying to get to that section. Let me just mute it so you can still hear me, because I don't talk very loud. Go to Carmel. Okay, there, Carmel. So I'm going to play it from my phone. And essentially it means full ears of corn, okay, or planted field.
Gerris, the grain has to be expelled. It has to be cast out. The grain has to be beaten out. It has to be.
So gerris is the beaten barley.
Beaten out. It has to be husked. So now we look at the root. We look at Old Testament 3754, carom, from an unused root of uncertain meaning. It's very important. They don't really know what it means. So it's an unused root of uncertain meaning, but they think it refers to a garden or, more likely, a vineyard. In fact, the King James translates it as vines or increase of the vineyard or vintage. So again, we believe it has to do with grapes and vineyards. Now, here, in order to
Okay, I'm going to pause again and keep listening. Okay, in this part of the video, 35 minutes in, he talks about this University of Wisconsin chart of the maturation process of barley. And he says that the classification of maturity is not the same way they would classify Aviv barley in ancient times. So let's just let him talk for a bit here.
Flour. Now it goes on another month and it's going to reach what they call maturity. Now we need to understand this is full combine ripe. This is a very different thing. This is something they did not practice back in ancient times. Yeshua didn't drive a combine. King David didn't drive a combine. Moses didn't drive a combine. So, but what we have back in those days, they didn't use a combine to bring in the harvest. They used a sickle. So we're going to see again later, when you harvest with a combine, you actually want the barley to be very old or fully mature. You don't want young barley. You want fully mature barley because you want the plant to be brittle. You want the plant easy to break. So when you slap it with the combine, the whole thing shatters and separates.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there just to support what he's saying. Yes, the modern industrial revolution version of agriculture has corrupted the understanding of this chart, even maturity. Not saying that the barley's not mature at that time, but that's not the scriptural definition of when the barley is a beeb, excuse me, which is medium dough stage, which is roughly was that 2 months from when it emerges or when it's planted. In any case, it's not the same definition that is used in scripture, because again, not only the definition is different, even the methods of gathering the barley are different, because they're using not a combine, as he said, but even a sickle and so on. Okay, this is a very helpful section of the video too. It's 37 minutes in. I'm going to just let him speak.
You have the flowering. So the flower is going to open up, and it's going to be fertilized, and then it's going to close, and it's going to form a seed pod. So then now you have what is called the water stage. So the first 7 days is what can be called the water stage. And then after about day 8, and the dark brown is the plant packing in starch. And again, it's not full, it's not big like this yet, but the plant is going to start packing in starch. And so it's going to pack on more starch and more starch and more starch. And after about 8 days, then it reaches what's called the milk stage. This doesn't really look like this inside, but if you were to rip this open, you'd see something that looks like milk. And then you give it some more time, and then now you're going to enter what's called the worm phase. Whereas if you were to cut off one end of this and squeeze it, or if you were to open this up, you'd see what looked kind of like a very slimy worm. Well, it's going to continue packing on starch until about day 14. Now it's going to have the consistency of what might be called soft bread dough. So if you've ever made bread, then this is, if you can get a feel for what soft bread dough would be like, that's what it is about day 14. Well, give it a few more days. Again, depending on the weather, depending upon the field, depending upon the rainfall, depending on a whole lot of different factors. Then you're going to reach a state, it's called Aviv. Find the mouse again. There it is. That's Aviv. That's what we call medium dough. And then at 3 weeks, it's going to enter what's called the hard dough stage, and then give it 31 days, give it another 10 days, and that's where it's fully combine ripe. Now, hard dough, that's about the 21 days, that's about the very upper limit of what you want to be harvesting with a sickle. You want to be harvesting here when it's medium dough, because that's as much starch content as you're ever going to have. And then from here, after about 21 days, things are starting to get brittle. By the time you get to 31 days, you can't harvest with a hand sickle anymore. It's just too brittle. Now, I wish I had more pictures than this, but these are the pictures that I have. Here's another view of this. So here you have the flowering. After flowering, you have the empty seed pods, you have the water and the milk stages. So it's not really very full. But then by the time you reach the worm stage, about day 8, going on from, the worm stage is later, about day 10 or 11, 12, depending on the field. If you were to tear that open, you'd have wet, slimy contents, or sometimes people cut off the end and squeeze it, and you end up pops out what looks like a slimy worm. Give it some more time, and again, you can't really judge based on the color, but do you see how full this is here? So this is somewhere from soft to medium dough. It wasn't inspected, but this is, you see how full it is? So you would open that up, and then you would inspect the contents. You check it and see, is it still wet? That's soft dough. Is it no longer wet, but it's not yet hard and leathery? That's medium dough. So that's parchable when it's soft dough, but what you want is you want medium dough because that's grindable into flour. So you end up with your maximum starch content about day 17 to 18, according to the University of Wisconsin chart. But again, you have to open it up and inspect it. You can't just go based on color or looks. You have to physically open it up and inspect it. But you see, once again, you see how it's still, if I can get the mouse back here, you see how it's losing its green. Okay? It's starting to lose its green because it's starting to stop packing on starch. It's starting to stop packing on starch. Yes, that's correct. So here we have hard dough. This is about day 21. You see how this is thinner than this is? That's because it's got the same amount of starch, but it's starting to lose its water content. Give it a few more days, it gets even harder still. But you notice, see, and then you give it even more time. This is about day 31. It's gotten so dry, you see how even the head starts to crook over because it's drying that much that the awn is starting to tilt. The awn is starting to lean a certain direction. Now, by the time you get into very hard dough and modern combine ripe, this is way too brittle for hand sickle. And this is one of the things that we just need to get these other groups, they just don't understand this. They're looking for dry, harvestable barley, and they're rejoicing when they have first fruits on the ground, and these things just are not right.
Okay, I'm gonna pause it again and just agree with what he's saying. Not just because not because he's saying these things, but because it just makes common sense to me. The Parakletos, what my spirit is telling me, what the Holy Spirit is sort of putting into my heart, is that yeah, it is Yeshua. It represents Yeshua very much, the first fruit. And so these stages of the barley and also of the seeds itself, I guess they're seeds, but anyway, the what comes out of the chaff has to be medium dough. Anything later than that, hard dough is probably the latest. But anything after hard dough, it's already brittle. It's already overripe. It's not representative of what Yeshua was uh, in terms of representing the first fruits of the harvest. Okay, I'm going to keep listening on. And before I forget, apparently there's a controversy this year regarding when Passover or the New Year began. So I'm kind of struggling as to why there was a controversy, why there is a controversy. Is it related to what was discussed in this video by Nazarene Israel? Meaning, is Sighted Moon, because that's the group that is already kept Passover in the Feast of Unleavened Bread, did they use the Aviv barley based on the medium dough, which I'm assuming that's what they did? And was it enough to fill an omer? Because if so, I don't see anything wrong with that at this moment in time, unless there's just a minor, maybe not minor, but there's not a consensus regarding those criteria. Okay, I didn't look into it yet, but my assumption is there is a disagreement about when to start the new year and when is Passover, because I think the issue is what day do we need it by. So I think that's the issue. Just gonna leave it at that. Okay, here's the 45-minute mark of the video. This is very helpful as well. I'm gonna
harvest by hand sickle. And if you were to open these grains up, you'd have something, you could still cut it with your fingernail. It would be a very tough, very leathery like consistency. So now here we have on the left, this is about as green as, well, again, it depends. You just have to inspect it. But here's your green, immature Aviv barley. Here's some barley that some of the other groups are calling Aviv, and that is not Aviv. That is too brittle. You're going to harvest that with a sickle. You're going to lose a large part of the crop.
Agreed.
And then on the
Agreed,
right,
100%.
this is barley that was accepted as Aviv in 2017 by one of these other groups. And that barley is going to go on the ground. Some of that barley is on the ground already. So that's no good. Well, for some reason, these other groups seem to.
Okay, I'm going to just listen to a big chunk of this presentation. It's really good, this section here, at 48 minutes and 14 seconds.
And the rest of the grains are medium dough. That's the time you want to harvest, because that's when you're not going to lose your crop. Now, some of the other groups, they have some very strange doctrines. Again, they want to see these fully uniform harvestable fields. And again, it's kind of like a combine ripe mentality. Like they think they're going to bring their combine by and harvest everything all in one day. And that's just simply not how it happened. If you have to get out there in a field, if you have a field of any size, and you're coming with a sickle, you can only advance so much in a day. So you need to start early, and it's actually a blessing if the field comes ripe non-uniformly. Because if the field comes ripe all together at once, you're going to start to lose barley, and it's going to fall on the ground before you're able to get it harvested. And some of these other groups, what they want isn't logical. So here we have, again, so this is Sister Beck.
Okay, once again, excellent points made. We want to go back to the ancient ways. And if you want to truly do that, including going back to the sighted moon, going back to using the barley as a witness, you have to also go back to the way that crops were harvested. You can't use a combine, you have to use the hand sickle. So he's completely right. Another excellent point he just brought up, and I'm not going to replay it, but I'm just going to paraphrase for him. You do want the fields to come in ripe in patches, not uniformly. Again, you're going to lose a lot of the barley, so you want it in small patches. So that's ideal. Okay, now he's defining Garrus Carmel. So Garrus means husk.
44 is garash. It's a primitive root to drive out.
Okay, so regarding Garrus Carmel, so the Garrus was husking, beating the seeds out of the chaff, and then the Carmel aspect refers to the blood color or wine colored barley that changes color because it goes through extreme climate stresses, so unusual weather, and then anthocyanins are caused. The result is anthocyanins because of those extreme climate stresses, and so it turns purple, and so on. Okay, I'm still watching the video. I'm at the very end of it, and I just feel the need to speak about this issue because I don't think it's a matter of putting other people down or condemning anyone. But the most important thing is that we prove all things, number one. Or it's up there, maybe not number one, but it's at the top 10. But number one is we have to worship God, worship Elohim, the Elohim of Israel in spirit and in truth. So if we're not using the scripture, if we're not guided by the Ruach HaKodesh, the Parakletos, to prove these things and lead us into the truth of these matters, then we're just going by traditions of men, and that can be a problem. Is this a salvation issue? Personally, I don't think it's a salvation issue, meaning, your eternal life is bound up in whether you keep the right feast day, because in the current climate of spiritual leadership, for example, we don't have, there's no Sanhedrin, there's no physical temple. Messiah is not here on the earth to explain these things. We rely on the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Parakletos, to guide us into the truth. And everyone learns at a different pace, and we're all at different levels. So for me, to be very harsh towards someone who's new going into this and just learning about it would be would not be a good idea. Actually, my own salvation would be in jeopardy, because I would be offending them and perhaps even discouraging them from continuing on and growing in the truth. But if I show mercy and I show compassion and I show understanding and even unity to a degree, and say, okay, well, these are traditions of Jewish people, and although I may not agree with certain traditions, the spirit of unity is not a bad thing on its own. But if we really want to adhere to the scriptures and the truth of the scriptures, then we have to humble ourselves before the God of Israel and say, okay, how was it done in ancient times? And prove these things using, again, like in this video, a lot of the historical records, historians such as Josephus looking through the various diagrams and proving, what does it mean to be a Abib? Is it already parched and dry, or is it brittle and fully mature or overripe, or is it, as he said, medium dough stage where it's still retaining some green, but it it doesn't the barley doesn't just separate from the chaff immediately. It requires a hand sickle to do so. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. Okay, I'm reading the Nazarene Israel weekly reports. This one's from February 16th, 2024, and it's saying here that, let's see, currently cold, wet weather has returned to Israel. They're saying that the barley, until the time of the new moon sighting on March 11, with a coinciding report, the barley will be ready in its Abib stage, within the 15 to 21 day time frame after the new moon sighting. Okay, so that's the first update. Okay, this is the newsletter from February 23rd. Here they state that there may be a need for 14th month. I've never heard that before, so that's interesting. 14th month. Okay, this is March 1st. Here it says barley update. As of March 1st, today's actually March the 8th, we have not yet received any report of an omer's worth of Abib barley in the land of Israel. We use Becca Bitterman as the only qualified barley witness that we know. There are other barley witnesses, but they do not use the true first fruits of barley for their omer. Rather, they use a random sheaf from the middle of the harvest, but that is the mid fruits, not the first fruits. So middle of the harvest. In her March 1 video update, Becca, Ancient Path New Moon, said there is a Abib barley in some areas of Israel. The barley in those areas is between 40 to 60% Abib. She said there is not yet enough for an omer, so it wasn't a Abib yet. It was 40 to 60% in progress, so not 100% Abib yet, and also not yet enough quantity. So quality-wise, no, and quantity-wise, no. However, there are about 10 more days before the determination must be made. The new moon of the next Hebrew month is expected to be visible March 11th. However, before Nazarene Israel can celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the head of the Hebrew year, an omer's worth of Abib barley would have to be ready to present 15 to 21 days later on the day of the wave sheaf offering. In simple terms, what this means is that before Nazarene Israel can declare the next new moon day as Rosh Hashanah, we must be sure that there will be an omer's worth of Abib barley on Yom Hanafat HaOmer, which is still about a month away, March 31. The determination must be made not later than the sighting of the first crescent sliver of the new moon, which is 10 days away at this point. While we want to wait on our barley witness, it seems very likely there will be sufficient Abib barley on or before the new moon, let alone the day of the wave sheaf, 15 to 21 days later. So while we plan to wait for the official declaration, a declaration of Rosh Hashanah, this Rosh Chodesh, seems very likely. But unconfirmed at this time, we will continue to post updates on our Torah calendar news page as reports arrive from qualified barley witnesses in Israel. We will continue to post updates. Okay, so this is the latest one coming up. Okay, March the 8th, today. Barley update. Messianic barley witness Becca Bitterman Oria Elite Israel reports there is an area of barley that is 90% Abib. This area is 50 times 25, at least 1,250 square feet. An omer of domestic barley covers 800 square feet, so it seems to be that's right about right on time, I guess. Becca has not yet posted her video report. At this time, we plan to post the video on the Torah calendar news page once she releases it. The new moon of the next Hebrew month is expected to be visible March 11th. Before Nazarene Israel can celebrate Rosh Hashanah, an omer's worth of Abib barley would have to be present 15 to 21 days later. So an omer's worth would have to be present 15 to 21 days later from this date. I think that's very highly possible. In simple terms, what this means is that before Nazarene Israel can declare the next new moon day as Rosh Hashanah, we must be sure there will be an omer's worth a little more than 3 weeks away on March the 31st. The determination must be made not later than the sighting of the first crescent sliver of the new moon, which is 3 days away. That's right. While we want to wait on our barley witness, it seems very likely there will be sufficient, Abib barley on or before the new moon day, let alone the day of the wave sheaf offering, 15 to 21 days later. So while we plan to wait for the official declaration, a declaration of Rosh Hashanah, this Rosh Chodesh seems very likely, but unconfirmed at this time. We'll continue to post updates, and then you see the scenario. Again, you don't want to jump the gun, but these are the scenarios. If I can open that up let's see if I can get a zoomed in. These are the proposed dates, or hypothetical dates. So it was declared, Rosh Hashanah was declared in Yeshua's time when the first crescent sliver of the new moon was seen from the land of Israel by natural eye, and the first full omer of Abib barley would be ready 15 to 21 days later. 6 months later, the feast dates for the 7th month obviously would start based on the sighting of the new moon again. Let's see if these pictures opened. So we have possible scenarios. I think this is the same thing. Okay, I'm going to close one of those. So hypothetically, let's just say March 11th, which is in 3 days, is the new moon. Has to be sighted to be confirmed. But let's just say this is the first day of the Hebrew or scriptural new year, based on the new moon and the barley first fruits. That would then result in March 25th being the 14th day of the first month, which would be Passover, and the 15th of the first month, which is March 26th, would be the first day for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, this is where I differ with almost everybody. I'm probably one of the only people on the planet that keep it this way, but because of the Septuagint and how it renders the understanding of the count, you're supposed to count to Pentecost, Shavuot, from the morrow after the first day. So the day after is not actually the 31st. The wave sheaf offering would be the 27th of March. Okay, so it would be the 27th. It doesn't fall on a Sunday. It falls on the morrow after, not the weekly Sabbath, but the High Holy Day Sabbath. And then even Shavuot would be different as well. So you'd have to count 50 days from the day after this day. Okay, I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so I'm counting right now. Wednesday, March 27th, would then be the first day of the count. That's the morrow after the first day. And if we count 7 weeks, so that's day 1, right? 2, 3, 4. Can't see my calendar right now, but 5 is 31, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 21 is April 16, 28, 35, 42 is May 7th, 49 is May 14th. So Shavuot, according to the Septuagint anyway, would be Wednesday, the 15th. So I'm not sure if that's on sunset of that day or sunset of the 14th, but I'll be more clear regarding that once we start the count, and also confirming the new moon is sighted on the 11th. So all these dates are really hypothetical, pending confirmation of not only the sighted moon, the visible crescent, but also the Abib barley, which again 90% maturation, or 90% of Abib is a month from now. That's going to be overripe, in my opinion, anyway. So I'm not sure how there's a discrepancy with Nazarene Israel, with Ancient Path New Moon, and also Sighted Moon. Why there's a discrepancy with Sighted Moon from these Nazarene Israel and so on. Comment below. I'm not sure why there's a discrepancy. Maybe I have to read the newsletters in Sighted Moon to see why that is. Maybe it's a difference of opinion of what is Abib and what is not. I'm not sure. So that's all for this video. I didn't want to go for too long, but this is a lot more clear in my mind now as to how to determine the new year and how to determine Abib and how much we need and so on. Should we go by harvestable? I was going to say harvestable fields. Do we have a combine mentality, or is it, hand sickle, ancient methods, ancient Israel agricultural methods, like they did in the Book of Ruth, for instance. So thanks for your time. I hope this was helpful to you as well, to get a little more clarity on determining the new year and regarding these controversies, especially with the weather very erratic as of late. So until next time, I bid you all Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum. Peace be unto you, and Maranatha.